Good day, students. Welcome to another online session for the course Digital Logic Design. My name is Ali Roman, and this session is designed for the students of BCS 3 and BCS 3D. In this session, we will be discussing different sorts of memories that are being utilized in a computer system or in digital logic. So, this is our first interactive session for the memories, and we will have the series of sessions covering the concept of memories. So students, to start with, let us first see the content covering in today's session. First of all, we will be having the introduction of the topic, then we will define the array logic. After, we'll switch to the random access memory, in which we'll see how we'll define the random access memories, uh, how we'll define in blocks, and what are the basic signals or lines that are used to communicate to the memory, how we'll perform the read operation, and how we'll perform the write operation in the memory. And then we'll switch to the example in which we'll compute the number of address lines that are used to access any specific location in that particular memory. As far as the readings and acknowledgements are concerned, we are on chapter number 7 of the book Digital Design with the Introduction to Verilog HDL. And the contents basically that are being derived from the main slides that have been designed originally by the author itself. So before going to the introduction session, let us first see what we've studied in our previous session. In our previous session, we've discussed counters, and we've seen the application of the counters, and we've discussed two specific categories of the counter. First was the ripple counter, and second was the synchronous counter, and we've seen examples for the both of the counters. The ripple counter is a counter in which the output of one flip-flop basically triggers the output of the next flip-flop, and the count sequence is initiated. And we've discussed several examples, for example, binary ripple counter and BCD ripple counter, and then we've discussed the decade counter, 3 decade counter, and then we'll switch to the synchronous counter, and we've said that the synchronous counters are the counters in which all the flip-flops are triggered at the same time and are synchronized with a single clock source. Now let us see what we have to discuss for the memories. In our computer systems or in our digital systems, several types of memories are incorporated in order to provide storage, in order to provide processing capabilities, and have different utilization and applications. For example, in our computer system, we can have different sort of storage devices as well as different sort of memory modules. For example, the random access memory, the RAM, that is used to process the information, and all the data that has been processed by the computer is first loaded to the memory, and then is operated by the system, processed by the computer itself. We can have several types of memories. For example, we can have the cache memory. For the cache memory, we can say that that is a type of static RAM, and we can have a dynamic RAM there, and we can have a BIOS there in order to store the basic input output routines and settings. And we can have some storage elements as well, for example your hard disk drives and other memory elements that has all of these elements have different sort of applications. And some of the modules in a computer system are primary system memories, and some of the modules are not as primary, are considered to be the secondary. For example, the RAM, the random access memory, that is the primary system component. Without RAM, our computer system will not operate. So in today's session, we will be having the basic introduction to the memory modules, and what are the types of the memory modules, or the categories of the memory module, in which we can differentiate between each module. So basically, for the computer system, there are two types of memories that are used in a digital system. One is called the RAM, that is basically a random access memory that can perform both read and write operations, but one operation at a time. And the other memory is the ROM, that we can only perform read operation and we cannot write into that memory. But there are some specific type of memories that are programmable. For example, the PLAs, the programmable logic arrays, and the PALs, and field programmable gate arrays, that are programmable memory modules in which we can implement our design and implement our logic. We can reconfigure our setup. For example, the field programmable gate arrays are the setups in which we can reconfigure our hardware, we can redesign our hardware by using that particular platform. So two main categories. One is the random access memory with capability of both read and write. Another is the read-only memory that has only the capability of read, and some programmable platforms that are reprogrammable or programmable and have capability to reconfigure itself. So let us see the symbolic convention which we will follow while discussing the memory modules. For example, if we see the conventional symbol for the OR gate here, we can see that OR gate can have a number of inputs and can have an output. Whereas, for example, if you have to define in an array logic or in a memory configuration, we will define that particular operation in that specific symbol. This is first of all the difference in the array logic. And normally in a programmable logic devices, there are millions of gates that are interconnected with some internal paths or interconnections. So we have to have a concise diagram that is required to represent those connections and those representations that cannot be represented by the conventional symbology. So we have to switch to the array logic in order to represent those sorts of operation. So this is the symbolic representation for the OR gate or the OR operation. This is array logic symbol for the OR. Similarly, for the AND, we will use for AND operation we will use the symbol, and these lines represent the number of connections, so on and so forth. Now discussing our example for the random access memory, we can access that memory randomly as far as its name is concerned, and as far as its physical structure is concerned, it can be implemented by the use of capacitors as a storage element, or we can have the transistors in order to store the memory. We will discuss all those physical orientation and construction of those memories later on. But first of all, let us first define some of the basic terminologies which we will be using while defining the memory modules. For example, what is the basic functionality of the memory? The basic functionality of the memory is to store binary information, and the binary information is basically represented as a group of bits and bytes. So we have to use some standard terminologies in order to use in order to define the memories. For example, the 1 byte is represented by the 8 bits and 1 word represented by the 2 bytes. This is the definition by the Intel. So as far as the architectures of the Intels are concerned, the 1 word represents 2 bytes. Whereas for the architecture, some other architectures, this definition of word is changed. For example, the MIPS architecture, this 1 word equals to 4 bytes. So for MIPS architecture, the word is defined as 32 bits. So one word equals 4 bytes. But we are sticking to the Intel definition here for this course. So we will be defining a one word equals 2 bytes here. So how we will communicate the memory when I'm talking about the term we, I'm referring to the processor or the computer system or the main processing module that is used to communicate with the memory module. So how we will communicate with the module, and how we will identify that either we want to read the memory operation or we want to write something into the memory. So let us first see the interfaces that are available in a memory, and then we will see how we will represent a memory in a generic notation, and then we'll switch to the example in order to represent the memory. For example, a memory, we can say that a memory is a block of set of locations, and each set of location can store a specific set of data. For example, we can assume that our Qaeda-Azam and Lama Iqbal blocks are represented as two memory modules, and each memory module has set of locations that are being represented by lecture halls, and each lecture hall has a set of capacity of the students in order to store the data or to retrieve the data. And as far as the memory modules are concerned, all the storage locations are uniform, and the number of data that can be stored is uniform. So how we'll access those lecture rooms? We should have the address of those lecture room in order to access that. So similar is the case with the memory elements. So if we have to access any location in the memory, we should have its address so that we can access that particular location. Now the address lines are totally dependent upon the number of locations in the memory that don't have any sort of relationship to the data size that can be stored on each location. So the address lines are totally dependent upon the total number of locations. For example, in our case, in the Qaeda-e-Azam block or the Lama Iqbal block, we have a set of lecture halls, and the names of the lecture halls are totally dependent upon the quantity of the lecture hall rather than the seating capacity of those lecture halls. Then we have some dedicated address lines that are used to carry the address information from the processor to the memory, or from the memory and some other devices. So these are the lines that carry the address information. Then we have some control signals. For example, the first control signal is a read control signal. If in this particular case, if this signal gets high, the memory, we have to perform the read operation. We want to read some data from the memory, and whatsoever the address is provided at these address line, we'll access that location, and we read that data and we put that data on these output lines. So this is the way how we'll read the memory. And if we have to write the memory, then we have to enable this signal, the write signal. We have to set this signal, and whatsoever the data is being provided on these lines is being stored on the location whose address is being provided on these address lines. So this is the way how we'll perform the read and write operation. We have some dedicated data lines that are represented by the data bus in a computer system. In order to carry the data from one device to another, we have some address lines, and in a computer system we have an address bus that carries the address information, and we have some dedicated control lines, for example the read control line and the write control line, that is used to provide the read or write information to the signal to the memory, so that the read and write operation can be performed. So one important thing, only one operation can be performed at the same time. Either we will be performing the read operation or we will be performing the write operation. So how the memories are basically represented? Basically, memory units are represented by 2 raised to power k words and n bytes each. And if we have to represent it mathematically, we can say that memories are represented by m into n format, m into n format, where these m represents the total number of addressable locations in the memory, and n is a data size that can be stored on a single location. So m is basically the number of addressable locations. And basically m is equal to 2 raised to power k, where k are the address lines that are required in order to access any location of that particular memory. See here the k address lines. Now let us switch to the example in order to conclude our discussion or to have the basic introduction to the memories, we have to compute the address lines that are required to access 1 gigabyte of RAM. This is basically the total capacity. So how we'll basically compute the total capacity? We'll multiply M with N, so that represents the total capacity of the memory. And the orientation of the memory, the random access memory, is byte wide, which means that one location can store 1 byte of data. This N, in our previous example, we represent M into N, basically M into N, that is basically equivalent to the total capacity of the memory, where N is the data that is being stored on a single location, and here we are saying that this N is byte wide, which means that one location can store 1 byte. M are the number of addressable locations, total locations, and we have to compute basically K address lines of this RAM having this capacity and having this orientation. So let us start our discussion. Let us start this example. In this particular example, M into N is given to you. That is basically 1 gigabyte, and we also note that this memory is a byte wide memory, which means that one location can store 1 byte, and total number of locations in order to achieve this capacity is 1 giga location. So here we can say that M is equal to 1 giga locations, and N is 1 byte. So if you place these values into this representation, we can say that M into 1 byte equals 1 giga location multiplied by 1 byte. This will cancel with this thing, so we've got 1 giga location. So here we got M equals 1 giga location, which I already mentioned here. But we have to compute the value of K. M equals 1 giga. Giga basically equals 10 raised to power 9. So we can also place that figure in here, and m is also equals to 2 raised to power k. So 2 raised to power k equals 1 multiplied by 10 raised to power 9, or you can say 2 raised to power 30. We have to find k here. So what we have to do is, if we take log on both sides, or you can say that I'm just, if you're confusing with this term, I'm representing it as 1 giga. 1 giga. So apply log on both sides. So log 2 raised to power k equals log 1 giga. Here we can say that k log 2, applying the log property, is equal to log 1 giga. So k is basically equals to log 1 giga divided by log 2, which is approximately equals to 29 point something, and we have to round that figure to the next higher value. So that is basically equals to 30, which means that for the 1 gigabyte RAM having capacity of 1 byte at each location, we have to have 30 address lines in order to properly access any location within that memory. So let us see, if we change the data size on each location, what would be the effect on the address lines. For example, now the memory is having the same capacity, 1 gigabyte. Total capacity is equal to, I am representing capacity as CAP, that is equals to 1 gigabyte. There is no change in capacity, or for the short form I am writing GB in order to represent gigabyte. But now the change here is one location can hold a word data, and for the Intel definition word equals 16 bits. So m into one word equals 1 giga, or let me represent it in the GB. And we know that one word equals 2 bytes. So I'm replacing this one word with 2 bytes here. So here we can say that m equals 1 by 2 giga. Byte will be cancelled with the unit byte here. So the number of locations are halved here in this particular case. So what we will see that if the number of locations are halved in this particular case, what will be the effect on the address line? Do the address lines are also needed to be halved in this particular case, or what will be the impact on the address lines here? So m is basically equals to 2 raised to power k, that is equal to 0.5 giga or 1 by 2 giga, 0.5 giga, or we can say that 5112 mega, 5112 mega locations, or 0.5 giga, whatsoever the term you want to use, or whatsoever the unit you want to use. So it's k log 2 that is equal to log 0.5 giga or 5112 mega. Mega equals 10 to the power 6, and here k is equals to log 5112 mega divided by log 2. So here we can see that the address lines are not halved here as the number of locations are halved. Only the effect of one address line is seen here. So we have to have 29 address lines here, which is approximately equal to 29 basically, in order to access any particular location in that specific orientation of memory. So address lines, the number of address lines are not related to the data size, but are related to the number of addressable locations that are present in the memory. Here we can see from this fact that if we are changing the data size, the locations are getting halved here. So the halved location doesn't mean that the address lines are also going to be halved here. Instead of 30, we have to use 15 address lines. Only the difference of one address line can be seen here. So I hope so this is clear right now how to compute the address lines. So try to compute that address lines that are required to access the 8 gigabyte of memory, and memory is a word oriented memory and also the byte oriented memory, and to see the difference in the address lines that are being used in that particular scenario, and also compare those number of address lines with 1 gigabyte memory as well, to see how much address lines are incremented on, or additionally used in order to access that particular location in that memory of 8 gigabyte in those two scenarios. So this is all for today's session. In today's session, we have learned the basic concept of the memory, and we've seen that different sorts of memories can be used in a computer system or in digital systems. And we've defined the random access memory, and we've seen that the interfaces that are used to communicate with the memory and from the processor in the memory, or from the computer system or memory within the memory. And we've got read line that is used to tell the memory that we want to read some data from your from any location. And then we have a write control signal that is responsible to represent that we want to write some data to any memory location. Then we have some dedicated address and data lines, and then we've seen that the address lines are totally dependent upon the number of locations that are present in the memory, and data lines are totally dependent upon the data which we can carry within the memory and towards the memory, and from the memory to the processor or to any other device. This is all, students. I hope so you got the basic concepts and you can compute the number of address lines right now by this methodology.